All right. Hey, welcome back to episode 2, season 2 of the Legacymakers Podcast. We are stoked that you decided to jump on the show with us today. Aaron and Natalie are here with us with the Glassmans. We got the Britons and the Glassmans. My beautiful wife, Megan, of course.
She's so beautiful.
Superwoman, Wonder Woman over there.
Yeah, she is.
So thankful for her. And she's a legacy maker if you ever saw one.
She is.
Anyway,
can we just talk about Meg this whole podcast?
Yeah, let's do it right now. Here we go.
I'm going to go.
Okay, Meg. Just accept the praise. It's okay. You need it. I know you want it. I'm just kidding. We're going to finish the conversation. We kind of started the last episode talking about drift. And we really just introduced the season. But today it's really about diving in deeper into, what is drift? Because I would say that it is dangerous. It is a dangerous phenomenon that happens in families, and it will wreak havoc if we do not catch it in time. It destroys marriages, it destroys parent-kid relationships, and it destroys legacies. And so we just want to answer the question, what is drift? Let's talk about that. And how do we avoid drift? We kind of hit on it the last episode of, what are some of the indicators, the warning lights? What does it feel like when you're maybe drifting a little bit? And, how can we move away from it into a life of purpose? And there's this one tool that we have. We're going to mention it in a little bit. We kind of hit on it last time too, but it's a tool that is really brought in with intentionality and really just being intentional families and people.
Right.
And so let's dive in. What's drift? Anyone know? Anyone want to chime in? I'll just go ahead and start off with what I hit with last time, okay? I said that I like to just hit it in cruise. We're driving back from a long camping trip and just sit back and relax. And before long, the alignment's not quite centered, and the car starts to veer to the right or veer to the left, and maybe we hit the guardrail, and we're like, "Whoa,
oh wow,
what happened?"
Guardrail. That's dramatic.
Or another car.
This is just a metaphor.
Go through the median.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Roll into the other. No.
Yeah, that'd be bad.
Please don't.
Collide with another family.
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
it happens.
Yep.
We're not going there yet.
It happens.
Anyway, that's what drift is. You're drifting in life. There's this. I like to use this analogy too. Drift is like if you've ever been surfing out in the ocean, and I mean, I'm not that good of a surfer, but I do know the swells, and in the summertime in Southern California, you've got the southern swells, and they're just fabulous. Love southern swells. I can hit those lefts. Oh man, it's fantastic.
He's there right now.
The winter swells.
He's on the
terrible.
swell.
I don't like. I'm a goofy rider, and so I don't like going heel side on the wave. So, and they're all right.
Drift here. We're all talking about drift.
I really got into it there. Wow, just took me back.
He's on the ocean right now.
Exactly. I was. I'm back though. But you're paddling out, right? You're paddling out past the break, and you're trying to get out there. You finally make it past the break, and you're sitting there, and here you are trying to catch waves.
Yep.
And you're just like, you're hot, you're warm, you're trying to get the timing right.
Yep. On
the wave, you're trying to catch it. You've got all these different dynamics that you're waiting for and trying to get just everything perfectly. You've got to watch out for the other guys, and then you can get in there. But before long, you look back at the shore,
right,
and you realize where you came in at. Like your car is parked half a mile up the coast.
Yeah.
Because what happened? You drifted down the coast.
Right.
There's this thing called an undertow or an undercurrent that you don't really feel. You don't really sense it when you're out there looking for waves and trying to paddle and trying to catch waves and get all the timing right. You don't feel it. You don't notice it until you actually look up and whoa, how did I get down here?
Yeah.
Now I got to paddle all the way back up the shore and try again. You're just like exhausted and tired and anyway. So I think I don't know that's my interpretation of drift. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I mean, talking about family, right? Let's bring it back to what does that look like, right?
Here.
This is like a
There
real
are
thing in
undercurrents
nature
in
that
life, though.
happens.
There is. There is.
But I mean, I think that analogy is a good picture of what really does happen in families, and
Yeah.
we've seen it too. When we were talking about this before we start recording, it's just realizing there's this moment, like Ben said, you look at the shore and you see that your car is half a mile away. It's right this moment that you look up at your marriage, you look up at your family, and you realize, this isn't where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This isn't what I wanted.
This is not what I wanted.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that happens all the time. I mean, for us, that's happened. That's like where Legacy Makers was birthed out of, was like that drift
Yeah, it's
moment
good
for us, for Ben and I,
Yeah.
of just having way too much going on. And
Way too much.
we had just had our
We drifted.
first kid, and we just realized this is not what we wanted for our family. And that's where we created legacy mapping for ourselves. And
Yeah, but even still, we still find ourselves, drifting from time to time.
Oh, yeah.
There's this
Yeah.
quote by C.S. Lewis. He says, "Indeed, the safest road to hell is the gradual one. The gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, and without signposts. It's the gentle slope.
Yeah.
It's gradual. You don't realize it's happening until too late.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and
You know?
I even think of like in marriage too, right? Like it's easy. You had a long day at work, and you
Yep.
had a long day with the kids. You finally get them to bed, and you're ready to just relax.
Yeah.
You maybe like say a few things to each other, but then it's
Get on
easy to
Instagram.
turn on
Right.
your phone,
Scroll.
watch a show.
Watch a show.
You feel like you're together because you're watching a show together, or you're both on your phones next to each other or something. But soon you're drifting apart.
Yeah.
And you guys don't even know
that's
each
not-
other's hearts. You've never prayed together.
Yeah.
When was the last time you had sex? And it's just soon. Do you even have a marriage anymore? Like that's what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the time.
And that's not connection. Like watching a show
Yeah.
isn't, it's, maybe every once in a while it's okay, but it's like,
Yes.
that's not connection every night, every other night.
It's just habit.
Yeah, that's just habit.
easy.
It's
Yeah.
easy. It's like, just relax, watch a show, go to bed.
Yeah.
You do that over and over and over again.
Right.
Yeah, you're not going
Yeah.
to have a good marriage in a couple
Yeah.
of years,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Quick challenge if you're watching or listening.
Yes.
Maybe just do a 30-day no show in the
Ooh.
evening challenge. I'm just going to say.
That's
I've
good.
been honing in on this thing because there's just something, not to like get away from drift, but there,
good.
when you start to realize that you're just doing something because you're just in this habit of doing it, and you realize like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? Or I wasted this time, or we could have been in bed, like holding each other, praying for our kids. Like that's the person I want to be, and we're not that.
Right.
And so we just kind of got a little vigilant for a while and have been removing electronics from our nights, and it's been fabulous. So
That's
just
awesome.
a quick
Yeah.
plug to I just challenge you guys, 30 days, or if that even feels hard, 2 weeks, just try like a week or two of shutting it down. All right, back to drift.
Great.
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah.
I needed that.
Yeah,
Let's go.
do it. I'm going to text you. Text you
yeah.
next week. Check in on
Hold each
you.
other accountable. Let's go. Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, for me personally, and I think it might look a little different for everyone, but for me personally, drifting looks like, and I mentioned this earlier, life is happening to me, and I'm not necessarily happening to it. I'm a very strategic person, and I like small victories. I like production. I like
Yeah.
achievements, and
Totally.
I feel like I am pursuing our family mission and pursuing our values as a family when, say, Natalie and I are sitting down regularly and we're planning our victories. We know when they're going to happen, how they're going to happen.
Whoa.
And that's something that I can get excited about. And then after a full week of hitting our victories, we feel on mission, on values.
Dang.
But when life happens and we get busy and we start filling time slots and opportunities with other things that don't highlight our values or our mission, then I feel away from that. I feel like personally and as a team, Natalie and I, and as our family, we're drifting. Because let's face it, I mean, our son is 4, and our daughter just turned 2, and they don't know if we're drifting or not.
Yeah. Right.
Right. It all basically looks the same to them. You know,
I mean,
they're
in some
excited,
ways, right? Unless you're drifting in your discipline, and then they're like, "Ooh,
that's a good point. Don't drift in your discipline.
He's drifting.
I can do anything I want right now."
No, that's an excellent point. But I mean, overall, they don't know the difference. But you know, as a father, it's from time to time you can look up and it's like, I don't know if Natalie knows this, but I feel like we're drifting, you know. And then that's when Natalie and I will connect. So for me personally, it just kind of looks like life is happening.
Wait, I just want to hit on something. I was really intrigued by this idea. You said planning your victories. That's really intriguing to me. So can you just kind of go into that just a little bit? How do you even plan a victory? How do you know it's going to happen?
I think we might touch on that a little bit.
He was born to be a coach.
Wow.
I think we might touch on that a little bit later in the episode.
Okay, we'll get to it.
Okay, maybe we'll get to it. Yeah, we'll get to it.
Well, let's dive in a little bit deeper here. When have you guys found yourselves in drift? What was going on?
Like, what were some of the indicators? Because I think we may have touched on this just slightly. And
have you guys ever been there? Like, well, I guess just like I want to hear let's hear some real life stories.
Sure.
Let's get real here. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of moments. Like I mentioned when we first started Legacy Makers and stuff, that was like a big moment, right? That's like, our whole family is not where we want it to be, and like we need to course correct. But then there's like these little moments too. I think we just mentioned discipline. Like there's definitely been moments where our kids' behaviors are far from what we would hope they would be, and then just realizing, like, oh man, I have not been attentive and spending time with them or speaking the way I want to be speaking, or I'm trying to think of a specific example to share, but or even, I mean, what you had mentioned, Natalie, too, of we homeschool our children, and there's always this adjustment of our work time and our school time, and then it's still like times with friends and everything that's going on in our schedules. And just a few months ago, it's like we came to this point where it's like, I'm not able to pour into our kids' schooling in the way that I wanted. And we just felt like we were doing like the bare minimum of what we could fit into our time. And we came to this realization of like, something needs to change because we're not able to accomplish the education that we are wanting.
Which, bear in mind, let's just give some context here. So we have 5 kids, and we've adopted one, and we're currently fostering one, which is a massive.
And at that
it's a burden.
time, we had like
constantly
12 hours of visits to do.
Right.
So we were constly
12 hours of
leaving the home to bring her to a visit, and then having to stay out for these hours and trying to do school while we're at the visit and doing all this. It was a wild time, but just realizing that, okay, something needs to change. And it always is in those moments of drift, right? It's always this like aha moment. This isn't what I wanted, or I'm just reacting to life or something. And then it's like a conversation, right? There has to be a change that's made. And so I think that is for us. And then it's a time of adjustment after that too. You come up with some ideas of change, and always those ideas don't always work right away. So having to be flexible and work around in order to get back onto that track that you're wanting to be on. But I think too of like, this is kind of going off of my own experience, but I think of something that someone who went through legacy mapping said. He said how, like, we're not always on track, but at least we know what track we're supposed to be on. And I feel like that is so true. Like, in all these aha moments, it's like knowing this, oh, wait, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to be. How do we get back there?
That's okay. So that's actually a good point. And I feel like, so I was just kind of realizing this in this conversation and just knowing, like, the past, especially when you add sports to the mix and you have 3 kids in soccer and 3 games on Saturday, and it's just like, it's insane. And
I don't know how it
feels like a lot. It's like,
it is a lot.
Very overwhelming. And
everybody's out of soccer.
I think one of the gaps for us, Meg, has been like, I feel like a lot of times I just need to know what is our focus for just this season.
Yeah.
That way I
That's
just,
so true. Actually, yeah.
I just need to know in my head, so I don't, because otherwise that's where the shame comes in. I'm like, okay, wait, we had this as our focus, and then we never had a new conversation about this new season that we're in.
Yes.
We never had that conversation.
Right.
I'm still on like this intention, and now the intention isn't happening.
So
and
there's
I'm
this
feeling
incongruency happening in your
Yes.
brain, right? This cognitive dissonance where you're like, oh man, this is who I want to be, or this is where I think I'm supposed to be as a family, but here's where I'm at. And like when you're around that so often, you like start to shut down internally or start to numb because you can't deal with the incongruencies in your brain. Yeah, absolutely. So important to identify the season you're in.
Wow.
When we were talking the last podcast about knowing the transition we were jumping into and how we started to adjust to live that way, there's something so important. You got this word from someone about breathing in this new season, like taking a deep breath and like kind of exhaling the old season and inhaling this new season. And same with drift, like when you recognize, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but when you recognize that that's what you're doing, that you're drifting, there's just like it's just a quick, simple mind shift that you can make of, cool, this isn't where I want to be. All right, how can I jump right back on track? Train our kids that like, cool, we don't have to sit in shame. We don't have to beat ourselves up. We just as a family get to reset and move forward and go back to this track that I know to ride on, so to speak. But.
Yeah. I like that Meg said, you'll see the indicators, you'll identify what's missing or what's wrong. And a conversation needs to happen. And a shameless plug here, that's where mapping is so important. Because if you don't have your values or you don't know what they are and you don't have a mission statement, then you've got nothing to sit down to. And just having already put in the work and then sitting down with your spouse and saying, I'm feeling this, we're feeling this, let's get our values out in front of us and just go down the list. Are we hitting that one? Yeah, that feels about right. Okay, this one we've missed. This is probably what I'm feeling here, right?
So good.
Maybe it's a commitment to family. We're just off on this. We're everywhere but here, and that's not who we are. So gotta have those values in your mission statement.
Yeah, it's good.
Prepare.
Yes.
Something we've seen too, just coming back to his experience too, is like sometimes those conversations are so important because sometimes I have in my head how we're living out these values and like I haven't communicated them to him. And so he's like, I thought this is what we said was most important. And I'm like, well, yeah. And soccer is achieving that by this and doing this and this. And he's like, oh, you're right. Yeah,
cool,
I'm glad we're doing that. I'm glad we're doing that. Yeah.
Exactly.
We have that so often too. He's like, I really think we're not doing great here. And I'm like, really? I think we're doing great. Let me tell you why. And he's like, okay, cool. I feel great.
My drifting alarm is going off.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll say, well, no, actually it feeds this. Oh yeah, you're right. That makes a lot
Which
of sense.
on the
Let's
flip,
keep doing that.
Crazy how that
Let's
helps.
do more of that. Actually, I'm with you.
Wait, that was all
in.
my idea, wasn't it?
Wait, didn't I say that a couple of months ago? I did say that a couple of months ago.
Which on the flip side, I do not to pivot too far off, but right now I just think it's a good time to share that I think it's important to gently, if you're noticing a spouse drift or if you're like sensing this like, honey, I don't think your heart like feels alive right now, or there's something that feels off. Are you okay? Like Aaron did that to me recently. Like I was just kind of drifting in my relationship with God, and that's because I was actually harboring some anger about some things, and I wasn't ready to process it yet. And Aaron grabbed my hand and was just like, "Let me pray for you." I'm like, "No, don't pray for me," you know. But he asked if I'm doing okay. Like he was like, "I sense something's off," and of course, like you know, the defenses want to, you know, rise up and you want to just be like, oh, who are you to say I'm not doing great, you know? But I realized like, oh, he's actually like, he's my teammate and he's recognizing there's like this area of dryness. And that moment caused me to like release the anger I was feeling, which then led to now I'm not drifting anymore. And so just a permission to you spouses to feel like you can have the opportunity in grace and in love to nudge your spouse if you're sensing that, because the desire, not to manipulate or anything, but the desire is to see the other living fully alive, right? And when Aaron's not drifting, but I'm drifting, like I can almost like sense that he's not, and it will like get me motivated to keep going. So I'm not drifting anymore. But like that's the beauty of marriage, is when one is like feeling weak and the other is strong. Like you get to lean into that strength from the other spouse. And so, not to like,
no, really quick tag on. Aaron, can you coach me? What are some practical, like just ways that I can do that? Because I feel like sometimes I've attempted and it hasn't been received. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it hasn't been received like successfully.
It didn't do what you wanted it to do. Yeah.
Well,
it didn't accomplish
what are you talking about? I guess maybe it's been like your initial
problem,
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's kind
both.
of like your initial internal reaction to it. It was like, don't pray for me, that kind of thing. So like, how have you gone about it?
I'll mention two things. While Natalie was talking, I was thinking about how her and I often, when we sit down and we have our weekly meetings about our family and our values, something we've done before in the past and we continue to do today is if we're working on something specifically, personally or as a family, Natalie will say, hey, you have permission to call me out on this, or to say that maybe I'm not doing this right. So she just opens that door initially, which feels very good for me because it's out there in the open, and I'll do the same, right? What the exact language that we
Oh, I don't know. I think you're right on.
Yeah,
giving you permission.
So there's that, and then.
But then, how do you go about
feedback.
it?
So then, for me with Natalie, it'll first.
Like, is there a specific tone?
Oh, there's definitely a specific
hand
tone.
touch.
But the more important
physical
thing,
touch is good.
Physical touch is important.
He never does that.
Honestly, but the most important thing,
right
is
after sex.
knowing when.
Just kidding. Sorry, honey.
Good.
That's when your meetings happen, guys?
The best meetings happen after sex.
The most
guys.
productive.
This is actually true.
We are no longer drifting.
I
believe it.
I was going to say.
We're back on course, baby.
Knowing the most important thing is knowing the right time. Is knowing the right time.
Yes.
I think a really good example is, our son Grant right now, he's fighting some big emotions. He's a big emotion guy. He loves to talk loud. He'll get frustrated real easily, and in that time, I'll correct him and help him change, but I won't have the conversation that sounds like, "Hey, when you said that earlier, that hurt me," or, "Hey, can you tell me what you were thinking?" I won't have that conversation with him right then and there because he won't be interested in it. I'll have it later.
He just wants to hit
so
you.
I'll use the same approach with Natalie. Honestly, I'll wait for the right time. If it's in the heat of the moment, it's not the best time. But when it is the right time, like maybe after the kids go to bed and maybe we're sitting down to a little bit of dinner, or it's finally quiet, it's like I put my hand on her knee or her shoulder and say, "Hey, do you have a few minutes? I'd like to chat about something." And she opens up with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you break the news?
Yeah, but there's there's
See, I feel like Ben overthinks it though. Like I feel like sometimes it's these really soft moments that right away I'm like, okay. Like,
what are you
just come
trying
out
to
and
get
say
at?
it.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah. Maybe you guys just need to have a talk about how you would rather receive feedback or.
Yeah, we've had that talk.
Good conversation.
But there's the hero sandwich is always great. Honey, you're doing great at
Hero sandwich.
this stinks. But you look great. Not that bad. No,
That's pretty good.
genuine. But it's all, I think in Meg is probably similar, but you can almost tell the spirit at which news is delivered to you. And there have been times where Aaron has delivered a message and it's come with it's felt judgy, or it's felt critical, or it's felt condemning. And maybe that wasn't his heart, but that was totally the way it was communicated. But the times I receive it best is when he will look me in the eyes and you sense this tenderness, deep empathetic kind of concern about me, where it's like, "Hey, are you good? I'm just sensing something. Is there anything going on here?" And that's usually been where I'm like, "Oh, let me open my heart to you." But it takes a while too. It takes me not being, because our age-old debate and fight is I get so defensive about everything. There's just this still working on that with counseling, but it's like, where does this thing come from where you just feel this need to, and I'm a 3 on the Enneagram, like high achiever, love to get stuff done, love words of affirmation. So any kind of feedback that isn't great, it's like, oh man, let me defend and tell you why I'm doing it right and you're wrong. And but
that's good. Well, let's I love that tangent. That's really helpful. Personally, hopefully it's helpful for other people out there. But so we've got this idea of drift. We've drifted. We've experienced it. We kind of know what it feels like. We know what the indicator lights are telling us. But how do we get back on track? And, there's this idea of mission meetings that we've talked about a lot. We've kind of hit on it a few times. You got to have this conversation. You got to have conversations around what is important, what you value, like where are we going? What's the point of all this? Like, what are we doing? Have a conversation. And for us and Legacy Makers, that's what we call a mission meeting.
Right.
Or a family summit. You guys have had family summits, right? And that's kind of like more of the annual thing, right?
We have lots of different meetings.
What are your guys' different meetings?
Too many. No, we do. But we love meetings with like good desserts, great food. Nice. So it's not really a meeting. It's like a sit and chat.
We make it a moment.
We do. Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be a business article per se. In fact,
it's a fun conversation.
Totally.
Strongly discourage that. If you're, it's okay to sit down with the planner, but if that's all you're sitting down with, then it's going to feel like, okay, let's just get this over with. And that's not the attitude you want going in. The big one for us is the family summit at the beginning of the year. And that's where Natalie and I, we try to sit down right around the first of the year. Sometimes it's kind of busy, and it might happen the first week of January, but we schedule it. And now with kids, looks a little different, but it might have to be a half day here and a half day there to get it all in. But that's where we like to reflect on the previous year. So we might go back into our phones and look at the pictures and just spend a little bit of time reflecting on, what God's done in our lives, in our marriage, in our family, the things He's brought us through in the
wins,
past,
the losses,
how much the kids have grown. It's a lot of fun. And then we jump into the new year. What events do we have coming up?
Vacations.
What events did we miss last year that we really want to nail this year? Maybe it's a birthday, an anniversary, something along those lines. Then we talk about finances. That's a big one. What's our budget look like moving forward? And some of these are fast and some of these take more time. Another big one is relationships. We look at who we're doing life with. What families do we want to pursue? What friends do we want to go after? Who do we want in our lives more this year? Who do we want to pour into more? Who do we want to serve more? What else am I missing?
Oh gosh, everything, guys. We talk about health. We talk about
fitness, health.
Like food. Personal, relational goals. All sorts of things. So it's just a great time to sit down. And we got this idea from some friends of ours, and but we just sit down, we kind of map out the year, and we've run into a lot of bumps of like, oh, this is just like too much. This is way too much. Or I can only sit down for an hour at a time. Or, we've run into a lot of things that we've had to pivot and figure out how to best do it for our family. But it's fun because you feel like you are marking like the transition from one year into the next. You're getting excited. We're not setting resolutions or like goals. We're setting family rhythms. We're just like kind of reevaluating life, getting excited about what God's done and excited about what He's going to do. And it's been special. And this is something we hope over the years, like as the kids get older, we invite them into it, a bit. And just have them learn the art of reflection. Like, oh my gosh, so much of growth happens when you learn to reflect. And so we want to bring them into that and start teaching them, like, this is what family does. Like, you get to celebrate the moments and you mourn the moments and grieve, and because so often you go through things and when you just blitz past it and you don't stop to look back. I mean, the Psalms are full of the idea of remembering what God's done and being reminded of His goodness and setting up those memorials. And so the summit in itself is that. Where you get to just as a family look back and look forward with Him and see His fingerprints through it all. So fun.
That. Before kids, it was a full day. We would sit down with a bunch of good food.
Oh, the best
breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It would be a full day event. Obviously we would take breaks, go for walks, but it was just something that we love to do. With the kids, like I mentioned, it looks a little different. So, if you're married and you don't have kids and you're listening, like, get into the habit of doing something like this now. Build that rhythm in now. before you're
so true.
you get started on your family. But
Absolutely.
it changes, it morphs. You just do the best you can. There have been years where it's like it wasn't as long as we had wanted, but we touched on the main points and we feel good about it.
Yeah. So good.
Low pressure.
One thing we found was, okay, so we have this summit at the beginning of the year. Like, what are we doing throughout the year to like look back on it, or like, are we sticking to what we said we were going to do, and are our health intentions like the same? And so we're like, maybe we need to do like quarterly meetings, or maybe we need to do one in the middle of the year and kind of rehash what we did in the beginning of the year. But I think that where we've landed and what has been the most successful for our family is we have a weekly meeting every Sunday, where it's like expected. It's we don't have to put it on the calendar. We just know every Sunday at some time in the day, usually it's when we're driving, or it's like a 10-minute meeting where it's like, what's coming up this week? What small tweak do we need to make for next week?
Yeah.
And then like, how can I serve you this week? Super simple.
Right.
Same 3 questions every single week. And so you don't have to prepare.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know exactly what to expect when you go into that little quick chit chat.
Exactly.
And so that's been super helpful for the week. So we're on the same page. We hit the ground running Monday, knowing what the week looks like. And then we've also found that like monthly strategy meetings have been our kind of best bet in terms of organizing. When that's when we look at what birthdays are this month, what holidays are this month, what books do I need to get from the library, what crafts do I need to get for grant set up, or like what's the nature group doing this week, that kind of thing, where we start planning out the month and seeing is there anything we want to carry over from our summit into this specific month. And so we have like in the summit we plan like some projects. What are some projects? A lot of it's like we want to get certain life insurance type things, or like wills and documents like that done. It's like, well, where are we going to fit that in? So we look at what we decided in the summit, what projects we wanted to complete, and now it's like, okay, what are we doing in April? What are we doing in March? What kind of project can we push to October or November? So those have been the most successful meetings for us as a family. And then it just makes the new month exciting. Like, okay, cool, here's what we're doing.
I would call that intentionality.
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's just like, exactly. I mean, major intentionality. Kudos to you guys, man. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Really impressive.
But it's a big one for avoiding preventing drift.
Yeah.
And correcting
You got to have it.
if it's happened that week, because we talked about, family drift happens, and it usually, I think the overall theme was it happens when the personal drift starts to take place too. As an individual and then as a married couple, the family starts to get pulled apart a little bit. And so having those weekly meetings where we check in, family, how we doing here, how we doing there, and then a quick personal check-in. Something I like to ask Natalie is, how's your heart, how's your mind? And or what's on your heart, what's on your mind? And so I know, like, just struggling with this week. I just didn't feel like I nailed it. Okay, maybe there's a little drift somewhere. Let's make some room in the schedule for you this week to get that fixed. It's a quick adjustment.
So good.
It prevents having to have that conversation we were just talking about.
Well, it gives space for the conversation to happen before it gets too far down the drift, right? It's like, how can you set up systems?
Boom.
This is what intentionality is. It's in part, it's like you set up these systems because you know yourself, right? There's a level of when you're intentional, you have to know yourself and how you're wired and what you need. And so how can you set up systems? And that could be like a really boring, dry word for you if you hear this. So I don't know a fluffier word. Think of one while I'm saying this.
Well, going back to the car analogy, it's like preventative maintenance.
Yes.
Or you're getting your chiropractor
totally.
You're getting your adjustment on your back.
You're setting up something so that you can serve yourself and prevent. I think drift can be preventable to some extent.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be a yes, I'm going to always drift. I don't believe that at all.
But it takes work, though. I mean, it
does
work.
It does.
I mean, you
have to choose to not be lazy for sure,
exactly.
or choose to not.
But you've said that
whatever.
Your every Sunday family meeting is like expected now.
Yeah.
Like
it's part of the culture.
Didn't happen by accident. No, you had to like get consistent. You had to develop habits. You have to have accountability.
Yes,
right.
You drift from it and you jump
which
right
are all
back on.
great tools to make sure you have. So I think it's like, setting an expectation. Okay, we're going to do the family summit every year at the end of the year. So for whoever is out there listening, it's like, when's your family summit?
Right.
And then let's just set a low bar.
Yes.
Habit commitment, habit goal of like having one conversation a week.
Yeah.
And who's going to help us stay accountable? Get someone else to help you be accountable. Get another family to jump in on it with you.
Yeah.
How was your conversation?
Yeah.
And I love how it's just quick. There's not like
quick.
There's not pressure on like doing. Like the family summit's nice, but like realistically, you can't do that every Sunday.
No,
you can't do the summit every Sunday. So how do you make it realistic with kids? With the stuff that you have going on the weekend or whenever you're doing it, and it's like just 10 minutes in the car.
Low hanging fruit, small wins.
10 minutes in the car.
So
that'll work.
What would we say is like the a great framework, like just a simple, like you guys have 3 questions, 4 questions, like framework that a family, that we can take and they can use, that we can use every week to have these just readjustment conversations, just tweaking, kind of bringing us back to mission and preventing drift, avoiding drift.
I think one great, I think there's a necessary question of like emotional connection between spouses, right? So that you can stay on point. And so ours is like, how's your heart?
Yeah.
What's going on? It's like when we know when we ask that question, it's an invitation to go deeper. Like, hey, reveal to me what's going on. How are you really
like
doing?
The mission meeting we have like, are we loving each other?
Are we loving each other?
Oh,
well?
cool.
Oh, awesome.
Cool.
Kind of like, yep.
Yeah. Are you feeling loved? That kind of, that's good. So I think an emotional question's huge.
I like that.
And then a quick organizational for us is what's going on this week, because there is, like with him home now all the time, the weeks look different a little bit because it's like, all right, Wednesday we're going to go to the snow, or this day we're doing that. So it's always a quick check-in on what does our week look like? When can you expect a break? When do I need to expect to be home to help with the kids? What's for dinner? We kind of get into that a little bit too.
Yeah. Nice.
What else? I don't want to hog the...
Well, we always ask something that we always ask is like, are we on mission? Are this week are we on mission? And we kind of tie it back because every year we don't call it the family summit, but it's like we're just talking through the year. We're like planning out vacations, looking at our values. We're like trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to be intentional about these values this year and stuff like that.
Yeah, very similar to the summit.
Yeah, and then every week we're asking, are we on mission? Or every month we're asking, are we on mission? And if we are, how are we doing that? And if we're not, like, where are we catching ourselves drifting? And we use the same concept of like just reflecting back, like, okay, what was important? What did we say was important for us? And is it happening? And if not, how can we make it happen?
Yeah.
That's kind of the idea, right?
Yeah, I think it's like if you're trying to just do like a quick check-in thing, I think having those like 3 points of like the some sort of like connection point, emotional connection, some sort of practical question of
like logistics,
like scheduling, calendar, and then and even if that's what do we want to schedule, what are we, because that's also like staying on mission.
Yes.
And then some sort of like future question in terms of staying on mission and not drifting is like, okay, where do we want to go this week? What is our goal? What is our vision for this week? Is it just a regular week? Are we planning anything in? How are we, is there anything we need to do to add to our family vision?
Yeah, it's good. Our other one is what small tweak are we making from last week? So like, what was a pain point?
Do you find that there's something every week?
Usually.
Really?
And it's like, could be the silliest, it's not like, make or break.
Yeah.
But there's something little. And it's more, it's a good place for us to just like evaluate what works, what doesn't work. It could be as simple as like, wow.
And it's more like in regards to your marriage or family?
Anything. Anything's on the table. Like, oh, wow, we missed it. We should have called so-and-so when they went through that struggle or whatever. Like, we kind of dropped the ball. Awesome. So little things like that. Great. Or the kids are struggling with these friends. Maybe we should pull back a little bit, or maybe we should coach them through that a little bit. So just a place to evaluate, like critique a little bit in an honoring way. How to better the family.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Dang. I love that. Because then it's also about like a continual build.
Yes. Well, then you just get better and better and better.
So good. Yeah, we need that. That's awesome. Well, all right, guys. I want you to look in the show notes for the link to just a printout of the questions that we can ask ourselves, just a week-to-week basis. Get another family that you can get accountable with, and having just this like short weekly just powwow with your spouse, or maybe if you're a single parent, get another single parent and just talk about it, or someone after church or one of your friends. And so thank you so much for listening. We will see you next time.
Bye.